Welcome to our newest episode of the Lebanese Physicians Podcast. And today we have with us Dr. Ahmad Mahdi, who is a first-year resident at Kansas University in Wichita, Kansas at this time. And I will be discussing with him today a tale of transition, a transition between two cultures and two countries, between Lebanon and the US. Welcome, Ahmed, to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Dr. Khalil. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you.
So, Ahmed, I knew you from my days at LAU, and I know that you did your medical school at LAU and subsequently, and prior to that, actually did your undergrad at LAU too. Can you tell us a bit about your journey from high school to LAU and beyond?
Oh, definitely. LAU at that time was an opportunity for all the middle-class families with big dreams and big anticipations to try and pursue an American system and American level training. So I did my bachelor there after I was offered some scholarships, and I pursued a major in biology and minor chemistry on a pre-med track. Afterwards, I was interested so much in the human application of biology. So I was interested in medicine and how to interact with people. And then from there onwards, I tried to develop more and more passion towards medicine. And it was a point whereby my background as a person that saw a lot of family members having a lot of complex medical conditions and a lot of loopholes in the medical care. And then I just kind of that fed me with a lot of determination and a lot of perspective on the humanistic approach of medicine. And then onwards, I went on to pursue a medical training at LAU as a first generation physician in my family. And then at that time, I was trying to investigate myself and trying to explore myself and be of value where I was among a lot of distinct and special people. And I think all of this fueled my journey with perspective, with experience, and I'm humbled by all the opportunities. And this led to me ending up somehow in Wichita, Kansas. So I think it was the cherry on top, and I'm very blessed for my journey.
Yep, and I think not only you're good at medicine. I think one of the things you're good at and one of your hobbies is writing, and that's how I ended up contacting you, is because you wrote a blog for ECFMG, which actually was promoted by the Education Commission for Foreign Medical Graduates because it was such a well-written blog. You actually wrote a survivor mindset in times of peace, a Lebanese experience, basically detailing your experience moving to the US and getting adjusted to the system here, and discussing your time in Lebanon. So that was a great article that you wrote.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
So basically, when you were at LAU, when did you make that decision that you want to move to the US? Is it because like everybody at LAU wants to go to the US, or is it like you had a different approach or a different mindset as to why you wanted to go there?
It was my experience in medical school was a journey of self-discovery. So I was trying to, as much as possible, try and explore everything that I went to. And since I was coming from a point where I was trying to discover my own personality in the field, I was testing the waters, experiencing different fields, and trying to see where I can be the best version of myself. At that point, I explored surgery, orthopedic surgery, and then I explored other options. But honestly, I was also fascinated about the medical system in the United States. So I think I always had interest in trying to pursue a medical training in the States. But I think the point where I made my decision was during my clinical electives. I took 2 months of clinical electives at Cleveland Clinic in Ohio. And when I saw the level of care, when I saw the way healthcare professionals interact with each other, and the model that is built to tailor to a higher level of performance to feed the medical system and rise to the challenges for the patients, I felt like this is a place where I can hopefully be of use, and this is a place where I can channel my energies to contribute to that team and to become a more empowered version of myself and keep doing what I'm doing in my own way within the system. I think at that time it became clear for me that it is time to try and focus my energy and focus my efforts in pursuing this this path. And I'm grateful to have led to this point.
And I'm sure there's a lot of work. I mean, you have to study for people who don't know, you have to study for step 1, step 2, potentially step 3, and then get your ECFMG certificate, which you wrote a blog for them, and then come over here. So basically, you applied, you did your interviews, and you got your acceptance, I guess, at Kansas University in Wichita. So, how was your feeling when you got acceptance? What did you feel?
So regarding everything that was happening back at that point in Lebanon and the lot of the stress of a collapsing reality around us and that being in the background while trying to reach for a huge light, a huge success, and finally grabbing that light, that felt like such a relief. Because there's really an endorphin surge in reaching a dream and reaching a goal that is set high. We always talk and romanticize the pursuit of dreams and the pursuit of objective. But really, when you try and get the glimpse of that achievement, there is an unbelievable feeling. And I think I was blessed enough to have that. And when I knew that I matched the University of Kansas in Wichita, I honestly was very interested. I was very interested, and I was eager to know more about how my experience would be in this program, because I know that it was a very rich media for a lot of physicians, and specifically Lebanese physicians in the community over here. And from there onwards, it was just one goal: to get to Kansas Wichita.
Excellent. And can you tell us, you mentioned the economic collapse in Lebanon, because I think the situation in Lebanon was sort of stable, maybe in slight decline over a long period of time, but then there was a sudden decline in October 2019. So can you tell us a bit about that economic collapse that happened and how it affected you as a medical student and your friends also as medical students at LAU at the time?
Yeah, definitely. So as just a background for everybody and for those who don't know, that Lebanon has operated on a malfunctional system for a long time. And every now and then it has an acute exacerbation, and then it is artificially resuscitated. And then the abnormal system continues and results in further collapse. And this is how it has been for a long, long time. But what makes the experience in that year, the year of 2020, 2021, much more intense and really shaped a well notorious description of the Lebanese resilience, is that it was so intense in terms of rapidity and in terms of intensity. At that point, the COVID pandemic hit hard, and it hit in times of a hyperinflation in the Lebanese liras, a collapse of the banking system, in times of marches and revolutions and pleading for human rights in Beirut and in all of the cities in Lebanon. It happened in times of a massive explosion that annihilated the city that we know. I still remember right now the phones ringing, the mushroom flame that everybody thought was very close to a nuclear explosion at that time, and working throughout that night trying to triage patients as a researcher. And this is one of the things that I tried to highlight briefly in the article, and how that hits heavy on the reality that you're trying to resuscitate for those around you. And during that acute decline in the reality and our desperate intentions to resuscitate our reality and persevere and trying to maintain our dreams, I was going through that with a lot of friends that were sharing the same path. And all of those people were very hardworking, determined people to try and reach their goals. in pursuing a medical residency and reaching their dreams. And at that point, it wasn't just for them, it was for the people around them, because the financial collapse made it primordial and essential for everybody in Lebanon to try and reach out to become a stabilizing force for their families residing in Lebanon. And at that time, I was still trying to persevere that dream, and I was still focused on my goal. I was still I was conducting research back then, and COVID-19 research was a nationwide study. So I was visiting areas, working with people, talking to municipalities and seeing people. And the thing is, I was conducting research in several areas while people are, and having the privilege of meeting people in their weaknesses and trying to talk to them on an individual and personalized level. And at that time, I collected glimpses of people's lives. I took screenshots in my head of 13,000 or so people that we've met and recruited throughout our studies, and people that we talk to and interact with on a daily level. And all of this really, I absorbed all of this throughout this year. And I was trying to remain focused on my perspective to not fall off, because it was a very sensitive time for everybody. And at some point, the gatherings became smaller. People were leaving ahead of me for the medical residencies, for research opportunities, or for other career paths. And by the time I got my acceptance, it was such a high amidst a lot of chaos. And when I got on my flight, and when I fixed my papers, and when I tried to rise to the demands of my opportunity, I think I've collected a lot of this experience in my head. And it wasn't until I landed in the States and started my residency program is that I started to reflect on my journey and on what happened throughout that year, on what's happening throughout the first period of transition into the States, because it was a reflection of the past experience as a Lebanese resident in times of collapse. It was a reflection on the transition to a residency program as an IMG. And it was a continuing perseverance for a dream that doesn't stop there, but just takes another scope. So it was a lot of things to reflect on, and those came out in the article at some point.
Right, exactly. And that was for people who don't know, that was a very difficult year in Lebanon it was not only the economic collapse, but the COVID crisis. And then on top of that, it was the explosion, I think, that took away all hope that things were going to get better at that point. So it was one of the more difficult years that the country has passed through. So can you tell me a bit, as we are getting closer to you getting to the States, so the weeks, there were the couple of weeks prior to you jumping on the plane and coming over here, and I think it was Turkish Airlines that you jumped on that day. So how were you feeling? What were because I'm sure you were sitting with your family and reflecting on the future that you're going to have. So how was your feeling reflecting on that with your family?
At that time, everybody was so happy, and everybody saw a light at the end of the tunnel, and everybody was excited for the new journey. But everybody was also composed in such a manner that we were trying to avoid any emotional relapse at that point. We didn't want to dwell enough on the step, because it was a very emotional time for everybody in Lebanon. And at that time, we were focused on getting the paperwork to try and remain to operate in its functional system, but trying to meet the demands of my residency. So what was that? Going to the Ministry of Public Health and getting some paperwork done, or just finding the financial demands of paperwork and visa applications and stuff like that. And once everything was done, it was a moment of silence. I remember going in the car with my family, and just they dropped me off at the airport, and then at that time, I recall my mom starting to become emotional, and then my dad just holding her back, just saying, "It's time to go." So we said goodbye really fast. We didn't dwell on the goodbye. And then I boarded my plane, got inside, and when I slumped into my seat on my first way to Turkey, it's the feeling that tells you you're safe now, as if someone's swimming so much and then he found the shore at some point. And this collapse in my chair at that point was, a moment of relief, a moment of anticipation, and a moment of letting the guards down to explore the emotions. And at that time, I remember just crying throughout my flight to Turkey, crying because I knew that it has been a tough year for everyone, crying because I know I would miss my family, but it just overwhelmed me at that time. But that also fueled my determination to continue what I've planned for my entire life to continue and aim to do. And that's pursue my residency training. So at that time, I was just focused on getting to the States. And I remember taking 3 flights. So it was from Lebanon to Turkey, and then from Turkey to Chicago, and then from Chicago to Wichita. And then by the time I reached Wichita, it was around 11 p.m. I remember it was just so dramatic. I just picked up my phone, wanted to meet a friend at the airport, and the phone call, just the battery died. So I charged in my airport, anticipating things. Then I went to my Airbnb, and at that time in my room at the Airbnb, it was a moment of, okay, we made it. It's time to recuperate. It's time to take a deep breath and then organize for the next step. And that's the transition into a new level. And those 2 levels intertwined at a certain area or a certain time period, whereby I'm withdrawing from the stress of Lebanon, and I'm embracing a new beginning. And at that point, there was a lot of reflection and a lot of change and a lot of growth. And I'm very grateful to have reached so far and then continue to reach further.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. It's extremely hard to leave when you do, but once you get here, you feel that a lot of stress is gone. I remember watching my daughter like playing tennis with her coach after we moved here, and I was sitting hearing the birds, whatever, and it was like after that explosion had happened, and I was like, oh my god, like there's so much less anxiety now than I had in the past.
Oh, definitely.
So basically, you decided like you got there and you're starting from scratch, right? Like you've never lived in the US before. You're like getting yourself ready to start a new life. Yes. It's hard, right? Like how do you need to find an apartment, you need to find a car, you need to do all the stuff, and at the same time start a new job, basically.
So my first time ever on a plane was when I went for my electives. So at that time, it was the first time I ever got on a plane, the first time I ever leave my country. So there was a learning curve that I had over there in the process, but the biggest growth, what happened in the transition to the States for my residency training, because it's a literal transition into a new community, into a new culture, into a more independent and a more serious phase of my life. I had to discover everything from getting a social security number to trying to maneuver through an Uber. Even the most the simplest of things were challenging because, for example, I didn't have a credit card of my own because Lebanon's banking system collapsed and you couldn't use anything from Lebanon's money because it was trapped in the banks. So I had to count my money, take some. I think I took $2,000 as an amount that was deducted from my payments later on to try and resettle as part of the package that KU offered for all moving residents. And in that time, the transition itself it required a lot of resilience and a lot of stepping up to the challenge and a lot of translation of personality in a new community. Now, this is something that's often understated or under-discussed. How to translate who you are as a person from your own background into a new community that's trying to understand you, not just the language, the ideas, the thoughts, the cultures, the emotions, and these took time, and it was a learning curve.
Right, and then you got this ready. You started your residency. So how was? I mean, it's right to say. I mean, you were in American system in the medical school, but it's a completely different culture. So how was the culture shock, or were you able to just adapt very quickly and make friends with the residents and work with the faculty quickly?
Residents and faculty at KU-Wichita are very kind, very nice people, very constructive people. The leadership is very intelligent that way and tries to always track the program members. But my culture shock I wouldn't say it didn't exist. It did exist. I did have the culture shock, and I did have a moment of, is what I'm saying really reflecting what I'm thinking? And that's something. So you have to. It's something that people not don't talk about enough. Is that as an IMG and the first time coming here, you think in Arabic, but you try and translate that into another language, and then this takes time because it's a skill. It's an acquired skill, and it's like any skill. It's either that someone teaches you it or you learn by trial and error. And the combination between teaching and trial and error decreases the error. And I think that's the perfect combination. Just like driving a car, you can get a manual, you can study it, but at some point you have to try and hit the brakes hard and then know how to hit it right. And then it's just a skill. And it took me a couple of months to try and get back on track and try and find my way in the program. But I was impressed at how the patient care is tailored to the patient and how the patient is guided to make his decisions and empowered through different channels in the healthcare system. So learning the system and learning the community and learning myself was, they all were a learning point and a transition point. And once I was comfortable and once I completed my transition mentally, emotionally, medically, it was time to continue to do things the way I do them and the way I've done them before, because that was the point all along, to just do things my way while trying to learn from people, work with people, and then honestly to be as humanitarian as possible with my patients and my colleagues. And this is why I did what I did.
So do you find differences like in how you take care of patients and interact between Wichita and Lebanon? The patients themselves, the faculty, the interactions.
There's a cultural difference. I think we both know about that. There's a cultural difference. The patient in Lebanon is more taken care of from a paternal perspective and a family perspective. And the patient over here is taken care of as in terms of a collegial perspective, and it does give there is a difference, and the cultural aspect of the medical system is a huge aspect of it, and this is something that cannot be accounted by metrics or by laws or by regulations, and it's just the way it's the soft skills and the ways you say to a patient what you want from him and what you want and what he wants from you to do to him. And it was a difference. And but the nice thing about my experience in the States was you learn how to advocate for the patient by empowering the patient. And you empower the patients with information, with resources, and this is how you try and deliver your message across, and this is how you try to practice. So that was one of the main points.
Right, it's more like shared decision making rather than paternal kind of decision made by you and
the family.
Because over there, like my experience was when I first moved there was if you give them the option to make a choice, they don't like it. They're like, why don't you just giving me the answer? Like I'm here for the answer, not for me to make a choice.
They look at you as a caregiver, like a caregiver perspective. They want you to fix them. Why didn't you fix them? Exactly. Over here, they want to make their own decisions. Yeah.
Yep. So what are some of the things I guess you're looking forward to in the future over in the US? And then the other question for you is, what are some of the things you still reflect on and miss in Lebanon, because I'm sure there's still some nostalgia to the home country, right?
Definitely. At this point, I've gone comfortable expressing who I am, functioning in the system, and my goals are fall in different categories from now onwards. From the first category, I just want to continue the person that I am. Now that I've succeeded to a certain point in translating my personality in the new community, and I just want to continue pursuing that. Another setting, I want to become the best physician I can possibly be for my patients, whether it's with didactics, with learnings, with working with colleagues, learning from my surroundings and from my coworkers. And it requires someone to be very sentient and very to have a lot of insight to how the system functions in order to find their own path in it. And this is one of my other goals. My other goals in terms of research is to conduct more research, to contribute to the research community as well as the medical community as I learned from it. I'm always in a student mindset, and I will always be humbled by patients' pain and always be humbled by my coworkers' information, and to always drive me forward. And as I'm doing that, I will always reminisce on the nostalgia of Lebanon. And I think we all share this nostalgia to the smell of coffee and the songs of Fairuz and the small chit chats on the way to work and on the way back from work. I miss the connection with my patients, the Lebanese patients in their own way, as I try to embrace the connection with patients in the United States and Wichita, Kansas. So the way you interact with patients and the way you tailor your words to a patient's concerns and the patient's emotions and the patient's background is something very important. And I will always be nostalgic, but it is part of who I am. It is the driving force to where I'll go next. And as I'm speaking to you, it is Wednesday. My flight to Lebanon is in 2 days. I haven't told family yet, and I'm anticipating to see how I will reflect on my experience in Lebanon as someone that has been in the States for 10 months by now. So this should be interesting.
Right. So I need to make sure not to publish this before Friday.
Wait a couple of days.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's stuff like eating, walking outside, getting a manouche, let's say, and the smell of it, like as you're walking or eating like a falafel sandwich for lunch.
Oh, yes.
It's hard to get over here. And then the other nostalgic event for me, I think, is walking in Rizal Hospital and getting called by Dr. George Khouri for a for a coffee.
The famous Dr. Khouri. Yeah, I know. This is one of the things that you can't get anywhere else. So I'm glad you share my nostalgia, Dr. Khalid.
Yep. So as we get closer to the end the podcast, to end this episode, so any advice that you give people coming after you? Because now the match just happened, and there's a good number actually of students from LAU and other universities in Lebanon who are embarking on the journey that you embarked on 10 months ago. So what advice would you give them?
It's funny that you'd ask me. I was just writing another section for the 2022 guide for the ECFMG, as just talking to IMGs, and I think I will tailor this more to my fellow IMGs in general, my Lebanese counterparts in specific. Find your own path. Everybody has their own story, and your success story matters to everyone. And succeeding in a dysfunctional situation like the one you have in Lebanon is an achievement by itself. Surviving is an achievement by itself in Lebanon at this point. So reach out, advocate for yourself. Don't lose your color. Don't lose your touch. And they will make it at some point. It's one of the things that really marks Lebanese expats is that their determination and hard work. And for all of the Lebanese people that are living in the States currently, we succeed together. We succeed in partnership. We succeed in collaboration. We succeed when we throw back a rope to the home country and we bridge connections across the world to try and create a continuum of experience that starts in Lebanon, that feeds with the nostalgia and that transitions into the United States. It is this continuum of experience is something that will connect us to home and that will connect home to us, and that it would feed off of both of our experiences. Those people in Lebanon wanting to come to the States will come to the States. Those in the States will help those from Lebanon to come to the States. And we really succeed together. It's been like this for many years. I look back on the people that left in the 70s and the 80s to the States, and they specialized and came back as faculty to Lebanon, and then probably either stayed or just came back to the US at this point. And I see that they're just people like me. I mean, they're people like me and my fellow IMGs and my fellow Lebanese residents that just matched or are about to match. It is the mentality that we have to share our experiences that pushes us forward. And as they come here, there is a time of transition, because we're used to live in a survival mindset back at home to survive. And we don't pay attention to it because this is how we function. We have to try and wait in hours to get gas. We have to wait in hours to try and get a minimum of the amount that we have as money in the banks. We try to overdo things just to get the minimum. And as they transition into here, they will find themselves in a new platform, and they will continue to grow, and they will continue to heal. And we're waiting for them.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I think it's once you're in that survival mindset over there, I think it makes you very easily adaptable. So you can adapt to any situation
Right.
very easily, and you get that mindset. So what's your future with ECFMG? I mean, you wrote such a great blog article. Are you going to write more for them? What's your future with ECFMG?
I love to write. It actually started as a fun thing, as an outlet, as a way of trying to communicate my thoughts. And people from ECFMG then reached out back. They had very nice feedback. They were very kind and supportive, and they published it. And then they offered that, as I said, to write again in the 2022 nationwide guidelines between ECFMG, I think AMC, and then two other organizations that I apologize for forgetting. But I will try as much as I can to advocate for my thoughts. I'm trying to connect with my fellow IMGs and trying to share a common thought. Communication is key in this period, because it tells everyone that we're all in this together. It shares experience, and then the person that's reading this piece can really relate to it. I hope so, and then know that someone else across the country or across the States is really having the same experience as they are, and their story is as important as they are. And then I think that it fuels unity and collaboration. And I hope I can still continue to contribute. I know that I will try to invest in every opportunity, and then we will rise together. I hope so.
All right. Thank you, Ahmed, for being on this episode. And I hope people will learn from your experience and from your advice to them as they embark on the same journey that you've done yourself.
Thank you so much, Dr. Khalil. I'm very humbled. Thank you so much. And thank you for having the time for me.